Welcome back for another update on Marcelina, my Reliance 44 sailboat rebuild project. So last time I showed you my shiny new chain plates as well as the designs needed for replacing the internal chain plates with these external ones. We also reviewed closing up the access holes that I had cut in the fuel tanks and the addition of vent and access ports on both the port and starboard tanks. I revealed a nearly finished deck with a new non-skid surface and how I was preparing the tow rail for reinstallation. So in this episode we'll cover, hey, what's going on with the interior cabinets anyway? We'll be looking at replacing the stanchion bases, tow rail, pulpit, push pit, and lifelines, as well as a handhold installation on the deck, the fuel and water fill ports, fuel and vent hoses, and finally how I'm saving a few bucks on carriage bolts. Okay, first, interior cabinets. Well, it's been 2 years since I designed the new interior and signed a contract to make it happen. To say that progress was slow would be a serious understatement. Just this past September, the contractor hired a young man and he was actually making good progress, only to have it come to a complete stop in early November. It turns out that the contractor had some financial issues, and despite the fact that I had prepaid a significant sum towards the project, he laid off his entire staff, including the young man doing the work. At this point, I had no choice but to dissolve the contract and reclaim the materials already purchased from the contractor's shop. Fortunately, the young man that was doing the work and his brother-in-law were interested in completing the job, and I have since hired them directly. They're working hard and expect to complete the work in the main salon by the end of January. It was an expensive lesson, but I'm happy to have this part of the project back on track. As far as the work I'm doing, with the help of my sons, I finished securing the tow rail sections. And as I prepared to reinstall the pull pit and the push pit, I found 3 mounting bases that were cracked. All I had to go on was the seagull symbol on the base, but a quick internet search determined that they were made by a French company. I also found 3 distributors with access to these cast aluminum parts, and their prices ranged from $77 to an astonishing $279 each. I ordered, obviously, the $77 option from a store in St. Martin in the Caribbean, and they arrived within days. With the new bases in place, I moved on to mounting the pulpit and push pit, as well as the handholds on the coach roof. Because the teak in the cockpit area is not ready to install yet, I temporarily mounted the push pit on scrap wood. The handholds were a little bit more complicated, with the need to countersink the bolts on the interior. For this, I drilled out a 1-inch diameter hole from the inside, careful not to penetrate the exterior fiberglass. First, I tried to fill the cavity with epoxy from above by placing tape over the hole inside. That was only marginally successful, so I switched to filling the remaining holes with thickened epoxy from below, which was much easier. I then drilled out a 3/4 inch countersink to accommodate the nut and washer, and finally filled the remaining cavity with more thickened epoxy. The nuts are nicely secured and hidden, but I wouldn't want to be the next guy that has to remove the handrails. I also cut holes in the deck for the new water and fuel fill ports. I thought I had the right diameter hole saw, but as it turned out, it was just a bit small. Fortunately, I was able to remount the hole with a wire brush to get a good fit. Using the correct hole saw, I then installed the starboard fuel port, as well as the fuel fill and vent hoses. I can't mount the port side fill yet because the non-skid isn't on that small part of the deck, but I did put the fill and vent hoses in place. Lastly, I've known for some time that I'm going to mount the new chain plates to the hull with carriage bolts. This has the advantage of making the installation simple and gives it a clean, finished look to the plates. The problem is that the only stock carriage bolts that I could find are fully threaded, and I didn't want threads bearing on the fiberglass where they pass through the hull. So I modified a stock drawing to be only partially threaded and took it to a couple of shops to get a quote. With 24 half-inch bolts and 18 3/4-inch bolts, all made of 316 stainless steel, I knew it wouldn't be cheap. But when the cost came back at over $2,000, it really made me stop and rethink the problem. While considering my options, it suddenly dawned on me that I could still buy the stock bolts, totaling about $400 to $500, and then just fill in the threads that I didn't want impinging upon the fiberglass with epoxy. I drilled the appropriate sized hole in a piece of plastic to meter the epoxy to the height of the threads, and taped off the threads I didn't want filled. The result was exactly what I wanted and saved me over $1,500. It seems obvious now, but I must say, I thought it was rather clever. So, next time I should be able to show you the finished main salon cabinets, work starting on the floors, possibly the headliner and the galley countertop, installation of the chain plates with my clever new bolts, and I'll possibly be mounting more deck hardware, including the windlass and some access ports. So thanks for watching, and thank you for staying with me on this journey to rebuild this beautiful boat, and then on to sailing the seven seas. See you next time. Bye.